2, 1. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to another exciting episode of Delusions of Grandeur, where we are continuing a martial arts mayhem month. And the film that we are about to discuss is about to gangway. So, Jake, why don't you tell us exactly what we are about to uncover?
All right. Well, we have a little film from Indonesia, which is properly called Serba Malt. I may not have that entirely right. I don't claim to know Indonesian, but apparently it translates Death Raid. But for some reason, it was released in the America under the title The Raid Redemption, which makes it sound like a sequel, but it's the original film. It's a film by Gareth Evans and written and directed by Gareth Evans. Came out in 2011, made its American debut in 2012. And the quick IMDb description: a SWAT team becomes trapped in a tenement run by a ruthless mobster and his army of killers and thugs. And that's pretty much the plot in a nutshell. It's a very, very thinly plotted movie. It's pretty much an action movie. But at any rate, we'll go ahead and do our first impressions here. How about Dave? Why don't you kick us off?
Alrighty. I have heard of this film. In fact, when I was bidding in a couple of groups, I saw some pretty neat Japanese Mondo sets of these films that people were bidding on at one point in time. So I guess I didn't win any of those, but I finally did pick up a copy of the Blu-ray set.
Very good.
Same one I got. It's a nice set.
It is.
I watched them back to back and a couple of weeks ago, and I thought I knew it enough to go on for this. My first impressions of the Raid was I liked the action. I did like how straightforward it was. I mean, the building that they went to was definitely like nondescript, so you didn't know what the fuck to expect on the inside. And I did kind of like that it did get down to like the one man standing, one man army kind of a thing. And I did like the onslaught of the main. Well, there is a main character, a main bad guy too. There's technically a couple of bad guys, but I did like the fact that he was relentless. So I mean,
we'll definitely be talking on that as we go when we get into the characters and whatnot.
So I rather enjoyed the action in here and the fact that as a martial artist for some of these guys, I mean, they could take the punches, and they could just get back up and be like, wah! And I mean, some of them were just same guys getting killed over and over, but it is what it is. So, I would definitely enjoy this another time down the road. I mean, I know it tends to be in between the action and martial arts a little bit because they've got guns and shit like that. But once the guns go away, the hand-on-hand combat.
That's not the play.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much my first impression.
And before I go around to the others, some background for those of you joining us. if you were following our plans on this channel and you thought that this was already a talk that was supposed to happen, technical difficulties and a very peculiar election night and other random things kind of goofed up our schedule for this month. But so this one got pushed back a couple weeks, but here now, and it's cool. So Forrest, how about your first impressions? Was this the first watch?
Well, so this was not my first watch, but it was my first time watching an English dub of it. The first time I saw it, so back when this movie came out, I was working as an usher at an art house at an indie art house movie theater. So I actually got to see this movie in theaters for free.
Nice.
Yep, and it was I was just blown away immediately. Like I ended up putting on my favorite movies list of my favorite movies of 2012 list. It was like if you took to me my first impression was like Die Hard meets a side-scrolling beat 'em up video game with a touch of John Woo.
Mm-hmm.
Just like with Die Hard, you had like that claustrophobic contained environment, and then just nonstop action.
Well, Evans has definitely cited John Woo as one of his big influencers.
Yeah.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. All right. Sorry. So was that all? I'm sorry, I might have stepped on you.
Well, I should mention that I also did that. Love the action, love the it kept me, just never a dull moment. I also did get to see the third. I didn't get to see the second movie in time for tonight, but I also did get to see the second movie in theaters as well.
Nice.
Which I thought I remember thinking that movie was just epic. It was like it was like The Departed with martial arts.
Yeah. Well,
Sam Jackson's favorite for a reason.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'll get to that in a minute. But did you ever see Infernal Affairs? The movie that. Yeah, so it did remind me because I've seen that. So I've already seen the Asian Departed.
The original.
So it did remind me a little bit of that. Yeah. That and the second one's a whole different creature. We'll give that a little bit of notice, but I know not everyone got to it. But Brandon, is this your first watch?
Yes. Technically, it was my second watch because I watched it back when we were prepared to do it the first time. But essentially, I had never heard of the movie before it was mentioned. And I have not been as big a fan of old school martial arts movies. I kind of go along with, we're covering Bruce Lee next. And I'm the same opinion that he had shared about the whole thing. Is I always thought that a lot of the combat was overdrawn, especially when it came to just the mooks. And that sort of thing is shown a lot in this movie. But I did enjoy it. I enjoyed the concept. I enjoyed the basics of it. I did like it even better the second time. Still, the fight scenes to me went on too long with the small fries, so I would get bored sometimes during the martial arts scenes, I'll admit. But that's just, when you can take over a minute just from like a basic mook. What was it that he had said? Bruce Lee had said, basically, if you really want to show the hero, you need to show how awesome he is, and that the minor bad guys should not be nearly his equal. It should be only the big bad guy that is his equal towards the end. And I like that concept. It was a concept he brought to the martial arts genre, which was really good. But I definitely see a classic martial arts formula that they do. That what was it? The operas or whatever they called it, Chinese opera, almost similar to that in a lot of ways. I can't think of the word of it.
I would like to think that because this involves a mob boss, that there are certain levels of henchmen. So You got your mid your beginning level henchman.
Yeah,
He's got
the
minions.
moose, the
And
real
then
moose.
above him, he's got minions. So of course you've got several actual bad guys here.
Yeah.
And you got some scouts too. I mean,
Oh,
you
yeah.
got the kids that are living in the
Well-
building that are these scouts who are like,
And again, I'm not going to get too far into
Right.
the issue, but that was just my main. That was the first impression. Was essentially, to me the fights were a bit long, but otherwise, I enjoyed the movie. I did enjoy the second one much better, and I would rather, if we do cover it, we just touch, as Jake said, because it does deserve an entire feature, because they took a because not only was the plot something I liked as well, but I also thought that they tightened up the martial arts in that one a lot more. A lot of the issues I have with this one's fight scenes were fixed in that one.
Well, and there's reasons for that. Like one of them, they actually had that movie choreographed before this one went into production. So they just had to fine tweak it once they finally.
Yeah.
And I agree. Like, and if only because we don't want to invite the wrath of Samuel L. Jackson on us for skipping over his favorite movie. There's a scene near the end that I put up a screen capture for Goto-san, one of the Japanese mobsters, doing his best Sam Jackson face. And I was like, when I found out Sam Jackson loved the movie, I was like, I am not surprised. but it's so as far as this one goes, my first impression of this was quite positive for the first hour and 20 minutes. I was watching a stream, a rip that did not function all the way to the end. So I had to cobble the end together on YouTube with low quality video. And fortunately missed almost nothing in the movie. I actually, basically the end credits, I guess, I didn't get to see that first time. Maybe a few seconds here and there. But then when we got it pushed back, I went ahead and bought, this. And glad I did, because this does have some pretty badass special features. It's almost Criterion level for the special features. And I went through most of those features. I have not seen the English dub of the film. And one weird thing about this film that I'm disappointed about is that the original film was scored, I can't remember who scored it, but it was scored by the sound people. For the actual Indonesian sound people, but Sony for the American release wanted a big name composer. They brought in Mike Shinoda of Linkin Park, and he brought in Joe Trapezzi, and the two of them did a score for the American release. I have not seen that release yet, but that score was playing on the commentary track, so I've kind of heard that score. I would love to see both and compare them and see how the music actually changes it. But based on what I've seen, just watching the original Indonesian language, Indonesian music version, which actually sounded to me more like a European film musically. It reminded me a lot of something like Run Lola Run musically. I liked it a lot more than I would have expected. I mean, I have seen basic bare bones American movies about this basic sort of thing. I watched SWAT, which I think had Sam Jackson in it, and I was bored. It sucked. I hated the movie because it was boring and had nothing to it except just wall-to-wall action of the sort that is boring. This, and I probably did just rain his wrath down. This one was much more, even though there's almost no real plot to speak of, there's subplots that factor in. Yeah. Like the main character does have a pregnant wife at home. he is trying to rescue his brother who is in this tenement building. He's made a promise to their father to bring him back. You've also got the subplot of the actual mob boss himself and the brother and Wild Dog, their other, and they make a very intriguing. The introduction of him is awesome, and again, we'll get to that in a bit. But so overall, and the film is brutal.
Yes.
It's so brutal. I usually don't like that, and there were moments that I did look away from, more so in the second film. But even so, I appreciated what they were doing, how they did it, and I got so much more appreciation going through the bonus features and stuff. The film is a showcase for Silat, which is a martial art I had never heard of before. I mean, I had heard of this film. I was well aware of the film, but I'd never heard of that until I watched it. And then afterwards, I was, oh, that's what that was. So I like learning new stuff through movies. And this is 2 weeks in a row. Like Color Out of Space introduced me to extraspatial colors. And this introduced me to Salat. So who says you can't learn stuff? But so anyway, I was kind of flip about how little plot there is, but really there's not a great deal. And again, spoiler alert, we will spoil the crap out of this, even with the relative lack of a plot. Basically, you have an elite SWAT team. Well, not really elite. A lot of them are rookies, apparently, but their captain, I believe is Jaka. Am I remembering that correctly? Jaka is leading them on a mission to take this tenement building, which you get this little expo dump in the beginning, but it's a fitting expo dump because he's basically restating the mission as they're going in. And that's a good way as any to sparingly set up there's only a few parts in the movie you really have to pay attention to the dialogue, and that's one of them. But it kind of sets up everything. And they meet up at the entrance of the building with an older cop named Wayu. And you see things go on, you'll learn more about him. But basically, he is surprised. He thought that it was just going to be Jaka and a couple of his. He's like, why'd you bring the whole team? But anyway, so they start taking the building. And then that's pretty much it all goes smoothly at first. They meet a guy at the door, and he actually, one guy wants to subdue him and make him a prisoner, and then our main guy, Iko, no, that's his name, Rama steps up and says, no, he talks him into kind of cooperating with them. They go in, first few floors are fine, then a spotter sees them and sounds the alarm, and then it all starts going down. And in the meantime, you've been introduced to Tama, who is the actual boss, bad guy.
Yeah.
And he and his two right and left hand, Mad Dog and Andy. And that scene, that introduction, you see him first. He's wearing this dingy pullover, like wife beater shirt, and he's leaning back eating noodles. And the other two are standing with him. And then you look and you see all these people kneel down in front of plastic. And he just casually finishes the noodles, goes over, bang, 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 bang. He accidentally, I think this was staged, but accidentally runs out of bullets.
Mm-hmm.
Puts the gun on the guy's shoulders. Hold this a second. He opens the drawer. He got bullets and a hammer. So I love that intro. It showed what a twisted guy he was.
Yeah. And this whole room that he's in is like
Yeah.
like this built-in surveillance system.
Oh yeah.
And it's incredible to look
Yeah.
at because he can see every single angle of the fucking building.
Oh yeah.
It's like he spent more money on that than the upkeep of the place.
Yeah, it makes sense. Yeah. So is in so far in you know from there you guys are right. I don't remember who first. I think it was Forrest. You talked about it in video game terms or whatever. Yeah.
But it was like a side scrolling beat 'em up.
Yeah. And in the commentary, Evans said that people have compared it to a video game, and he's like, I take that as a compliment because it kind of is. Because it's like as you go higher up in the building,
Each
you
level,
reach higher. Yeah, like the machete gang, that's a mid boss. I mean, that's like a mid boss. But it's a tough mid boss that you gotta work hard to get around. You know, you do have a lot of mooks, especially at first. Like the first few are just straight up mooks. I mean, and Brandon, to your point, I do feel like the use of or the ability of the mooks does increase as you go. It's not like they're all mooks. They definitely do have a progression. And then of course near the end, you finally have Andy and Mad Dog thrown into the mix, and that we'll get to more of that as we get to that. But I'm thinking this might be a good one to kind of focus more on character, and then maybe hit. So let's start with the main character, Rama, who is played by Iko Uwais, and he's this guy. He's introduced through, and this is not an uncommon cop thing. You see the morning routine, basically. You see he's a devout Muslim. You see him doing the morning prayer. You see that he is really devout in his exercise regimen. I mean, he is definitely
he's training.
Yeah, exactly. He's training like crazy. And then what's that?
I said he takes his job and his family seriously.
Exactly.
Well,
but
yeah,
then you get to see the family.
His father appears to be the older man,
Right?
But I also think that he's not just father; he's also sensei.
It could well be. There could be a sense of that, yeah. And actually, if I remember correctly, I think. Nah, I thought I had a thought, and I can't remember what it was. Never mind. But you do see, this is where you see that he does have a wife, and she is pregnant, and they seem to be pretty close. And you know, she's obviously apprehensive. He's a little apprehensive too. He is a rookie after all, and he's getting ready to go on this dangerous mission. You know, and he of course promises the father that he'll bring this brother home. And then as you go, you follow along. At first, he is part of the team. And eventually, events kind of, you have moments where he stands out. Like you have on the truck, you have him kind of acting as a little bit of a calming presence, at least, you know, to a degree. He does talk that one dude down at the door and saves one of the tenants from being unnecessarily killed, which comes around to help later on, obviously, in a pretty pivotal action sequence there. And then, you know, he does eventually, as Dave said, kind of becomes a one-man army.
Yes.
But the thing about Rama is that his level as being a rookie in the force kind of becomes an advantage for him later on in the film, and I think that's why they underestimate him and his power on that force. They just think that okay, this is this last. Well, they automatically the bad guys know that this is an unsanctioned raid.
Right. But most of them don't. I mean, the good guys, most of them don't.
Correct.
And that's
So-
a pretty big plot twist when it comes out. It's interesting.
Oh, yeah.
I wasn't even supposed to be here today.
I'm not even supposed to be here. Yeah, exactly.
or like John McClure, since I mentioned Die Hard earlier, John McClane, wrong place, the wrong time.
Yeah. Well, for the terrorists at least. But so you've got Rama basically, and again he's brothers with Andy, who's the right hand, and I guess we can go ahead and give him a quick mention. Andy is played by Donnie Alamsia, and he is at first he's introduced by by Jaka as when he's giving that briefing. He mentions that he's kind of not necessarily the brains behind the outfit, but sort of the
muscle.
No, he's not the muscle. He's the what's the word I want to say?
The right
deputy
hand,
lieutenant, the right hand deputy, basically.
The lieutenant.
Yeah.
The left, exactly. And he is considered the more level-headed of the two.
Yeah.
And he does show this in the film, but he recognizes his brother on the surveillance footage, and that does lead to some interesting consequences and an interesting. He didn't think his day was going to go that way. But what are y'all's thoughts on the two of them, just generally as characters and
Well, in a sense, they're kind of like opposites of a coin.
Yeah.
They are brothers, which we eventually learn, and it's just one took the low road and one took the high road, and or one took the good road or one took the bad road, kind of a thing. And to me, I think that the fact that both of them are good at what they do, kind of plays well for them up until a certain point. And it's not until later that we get the whole thing with the other muscle in the and that other muscle has a couple of other lieutenants underneath him too, and there is a moment I think where we get one of the guys, he's dragging a bat, was it, along the wall or whatnot, while a group of the police. The
leader of the machete gang is scraping a machete along the wall, and that was kind of a fun. You do get a guy dragging a bat in the second one, but that was
spotter. After that spotter ultimately sounds the alarm. He goes up a level, and it's at that point that one of the police people ends up shooting him in the head. But by that time, he's already sounded the alarm, and then they're on this level where they just get shot to shit.
Well, it plays out a little different, but actually the way that plays out, let's go ahead and mention that was a very cool scene. And that was a very important scene. And that'd probably be, I guess this will be an opportunity to introduce Wahyu as a character. Wahyu, this is the first time you see him do something really, really bad. And it's not the last. But for the most part, he's kind of this older dude who isn't really, he seems kind of like a coward. He seems like, and there are hints dropped all along that he is not on the up and up. And, but one of those hints is where you get this boy who comes out of the bathroom, sees them. Jaka tries really hard to calm him down, say, stay put. Don't worry, and then he runs off and stops at the atrium and cries out to the kid on the floor up above And that's the kid that actually sounds the alarm up above. But this kid, he's still standing in front of the door, and you see a bullet come through, right through his neck in slow motion. And you see him. And in the commentary, Evans mentioned that a lot of people were rough on that scene because you don't kill a kid, But he felt like in this particular instance, he tried to do it as respectfully as one could do in that situation, and I think it played out really well. Like it actually played out really nicely.
What needs to understand is that in these other third world countries, kids from like 5 on up are trained at a very early age to kill. And this is a way of life in those other countries.
Especially a kid growing in a situation like this building. Like it pretty much is a den of thieves in a sense, for the most part. Not all of them. That first dude they meet is decent.
To me, I feel like it's more of a halfway house for drug runners. Basically.
Well, I think it's that,
and a drug operation there.
there's that, but it's also a place off the grid for a lot of people who cannot afford to live otherwise. So there's a lot of poor families that are just kind of like good people that are living there, and it's just they probably cannot afford to live in there. Where is this located? Thailand? Is that right?
No, it's Indonesia. Jakarta.
Indonesia. Because some of those places are extremely high cost of living, so it's sometimes it's just you could have had some people that are doing honest work, but this is the only affordable housing. Even
in Jakarta, you have really ritzy areas, and then you have not ritzy areas, and that's kind of which actually I want to say both of them take place in Jakarta, and you definitely see a lot of the ritziness in the second one. It's like it's a totally different level of society and financially, different level. Let's put it that way. So, and then again with Wyu, you eventually find out that yes, the guy is crooked as can be, and that he basically was called by the higher ups to come in and put a hit on Tama. And that was this whole thing. And he used the pretext of it to bring in the SWAT, commander, and ended up having the team tagging along because, I guess he thought if it was just 2 or 3, he could get in and out, not a problem, which might have been true because they all knew him in the building, as you come to find out. They all knew him because he'd been there many times before. But, and then you also find out. I guess we'll go ahead and do Tama. You come to find out Tama got a call from the same people telling him this guy was coming for him and that he was not to let him leave alive. So they both were under the impression that the other one was to die. And I have the feeling that Tama actually got the better info in that deal. But it was, like I said, his intro aside, he spends the better part of the film in his little fortress up in, yes. And just directing like a puppet master, just pulling everyone's strings. And there's this great moment where you hear him over the radio and you got like this close-up of just his mouth and the mic and he's just like dripping with menace. He's just saying, basically, we have vermin in the hallway. Why don't everyone just get out and take care of the pests, basically. I'm paraphrasing, but that's the
and I will make it worth your while.
Yes. Consider yourself a permanent resident if you manage to.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah. So that was, but that whole address, the way they shot that, the way he was talking, I like that scene. I was like, he was.
Oh, he's a cool character. And, you know, he doesn't rule it by the fact that he's not the badass that everybody else is combat wise. He's just badass personality and intellect wise, which is what But sometimes that proves, the big boss doesn't always have to be like this combat hero in order to, or super villain.
Well, speaking of super villains, though, he did. I wonder if anyone else thought this. In some ways, especially near the end, when he's lost, when Wayu has apprehended him, the way he acts and behaves in that final scene of before he gets off, he reminded me so much of the Joker. Like just his smile. He had the Jack Nicholson smile, and he just had the whole I don't give a damn attitude down pat. And he reminded me of him. I don't know if anyone else got that, but I thought that was fun.
There is an earlier moment that I wanted to mention.
Okay. Sure.
When they end up separating for a little bit, and Yui is in this room with this refrigerator, and he ends up having to use it as a bomb.
Yeah.
That whole sequence there, I love that entirety of it because they used axes and
right. They had a hole in the floor and all that kind of stuff. And
like
I said, I saw a lot of them behind the scenes on that, and I was impressed with what they went through to put that together. But they're using he basically rips this big propane tank out, throws it in a fridge, tosses the grenade in, and angles it right in front of the door to blow all the people outside away. And it works pretty decently. I thought that was kind of fun.
What do you think?
Yeah. What do I think?
Yeah.
What do you think about some of the action points that we're talking about?
The action. Oh god, it's very intense, very unrelenting. Love. Very well edited, very well choreographed and edited.
Yeah. Yeah, and I definitely want to actually.
I know you weren't down with the brutality, but that definitely, but it definitely resonated. It resonated with me.
See, I'm kind of funny with that. I don't generally like it. It's not something I seek out in a movie, but when it fits, and it's not like so into the gore that I can't watch it, then I'm fine with that. You know what I mean? Like I've seen some really, shockingly or brutally violent stuff that I'm like, oh, and I've seen stuff I'm like, ugh. It depends. But like with, I do want a quick word. I was going to kind of save this until we got to Mad Dog, but let's go ahead and bring him in, I guess. Yayan Ruyan plays Mad Dog, and Mad Dog lives up to his name. He is a fun character too. He's this little dude, like he's just this little dude, and you wouldn't think much to look at him, but
so was Bruce Lee.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And he's got like this long stringy hair,
right? So you really see him. He kind of just hangs out at first, and then he and Andy are sent down to the lower levels to look around and whatever. And Andy finds his brother, and they have a little heart-to-heart. But after he kills his own men in the elevator, which apparently Evans said that was the one scene he would have cut from the movie. But I don't know. I thought it was kind of interesting. But the Mad Dog, meanwhile, meets up with Jaka. And they have this fun little weird standoff where it's like Mad Dog pulls a gun and Jaka pulls a knife, and they're, and he sends Wayu and I think it was who was the other? Was it Boa or Booty? Dagu. I can't remember. I got a little mixed up on some of the background. I think Boa was the one who lost an ear, wasn't he?
Yeah.
So it wasn't him. It was one of the others. I think it might have been Booty, who I've already saw him. He is told to take Wayu and get out of there. No, Wayu runs away, and he's
Yeah.
told protect him. And then so Jaka and Mad Dog have this tense standoff. He's like, Mad Dog's like lower the knife, and Jaka does. And then he kind of waves him into a room.
Mm-hmm.
And then to Jaka's surprise, he unloads the clip, puts the gun down, and he's like, I never liked these. You know, it's like, it's too mechanical. There's no, he basically says it's no fun, you know, which actually he was channeling the essence of the Joker in that moment too, you know, in a sense. But his more brutal instincts, let's put it that way. He puts down the gun, and then they take their pose and they start fighting. And apparently, and we'll go ahead and mention, we keep mentioning Jaka, and we haven't been able to do him as a character. Jaka is played by Joe Taslim, and I thought he did a great job as the commander. He did a good job essaying he kept everyone in line. He was very believable as the guy in charge.
Mm-hmm.
And he apparently actually is a judo champion. So in this scene, he was using judo moves. Mm-hmm. But Wayu is a silat master. He actually, the actor that plays Mad Dog, Yayan, actually trained the Indonesian, basically their version of the Secret Service. He actually had trained some of them in the past. Mm-hmm. So that's some pretty good credentials there, I think. But so they have this pretty decent fight sequence that is over too quick because Jaka's just no match for, you got this short dude who's doing a fighting style that's heavy on kicks and low center of gravity stuff. And then the big dude who does judo, which he was at a disadvantage. But it's interesting seeing that when you look at it from that perspective, it was fun rewatching that scene and getting to look at that. But I do want to make a mention of what Forrest said about the choreography. Yayan and Iko, the guys that play Mad Dog and Rama, along with Gareth Edwards, were actually the fight choreographers for both films. They worked for months choreographing with Silat, but also with the other fighting styles. Some of the others use stuff that's more like rough street fighting, MMA kind of stuff. And I think a couple of them are like Taekwondo users or whatever. But the two of them are Silat masters, basically. So it was kind of cool to see that Yayan wasn't even going to be cast in the film, but they were having trouble finding a Mad Dog. And one of the producers piped up and said, just use him. So it got a little distracting in the second film when he played a completely different character. And I was like, I thought that guy died in the first one. But whatever. If you got talent, you use it, right? But what's y'all's thoughts overall on Mad Dog as a character and whatever?
Mad Dog is just like he's an interesting character because he's got an easy way about him. He's not exactly. If you attack him, he's going to attack you. But he generally does not like the weaponized combat.
No.
Whereas he definitely likes to get more physical, and you don't expect some of what he can do to do some of his opponents.
He likes a fair fight, typically.
When you're speaking of the Salat, I was just reading up on the Salat Indonesian martial arts thing. It's actually referred to as Pencak Salat, and apparently historically the origins of the fighting style initially really did start with fighting with weaponry. Composed to unarmed combat, So I do like the fact that Uwe can fight as well as shoot weapons at the same time. I mean, it's a different kind of a combat, and using both was kind of interesting, and
I believe
it's not just weapons that he can use. He can use other things like bats, anything he can get his hands on,
refrigerators. Well, what's that?
I said anything. They pretty much anything can be a weapon in this movie.
The throw anything feat. And you're talking about the origins of it. There are a lot of legends about the origins of Salat, and they're very different depending on which one you look at. But apparently, most of them involve a woman, and they involve using moves inspired by moves that animals make naturally. And apparently, some of the legends, the woman's name was Rama, so that's why the main dude's name is Rama. It's sort of like is sort of a nod to that origin or whatever. But I had another thought, and I've lost it. But anyway, did we hit the majority of the main? I think we hit the main characters. I mean, again, there's the guy who loses his ear, and I think his name was Bowo. He's played by Tegar Satria, and I don't know that that's really as big of a.
They're not that Bolo.
He survived. Bowo. I don't know what I said, and I don't know if I said that. Apparently, Ray Saitapi plays Tama. Pierre Gruno is Yu. I believe they were considered two of the better known people in the cast, if I'm not much mistaken on that. Some of these people were not really actors before this. Iko Uwais, the main guy, was a what was it? He was like a phone. He's like a what did they say? Like an insurance salesman or something. I can't remember exactly, but it was
born in Jakarta, Indonesia, and I guess he was a master of this Salat martial arts thing, and he evidently founded a Salat school. So,
okay, he was a driver in a telecommunications company. Yeah. Yeah. So that's kind of funny. And what I found really funny, because you have this building that's a character unto itself.
Oh, yeah, the building.
And it's got some weird architecture. The guy who's the head of the Machete Gang, who looks like he probably has spent years playing this tough character, brutal, mook type character, occasionally maybe a boss. He looks like the kind of guy you would not want to mess with if you met him on the street or whatever. And he's perfectly convincing in the role. Supposedly his day job was an architect, and he wasn't even doing much acting when he got this role. I found that kind of amusingly almost ironic in a sense, but certainly interesting. But I was intrigued by reading, the director is Welsh, but he has a half Indonesian wife who had family in Indonesia. He wasn't getting anywhere in the film industry. She's like, why don't you come here and do this documentary? I can put you, And that kind of started the snowball into what would become the Raid 2 and whatever. And so that's kind of funny. Nico's been with him, and Yayan has been with him kind of for a little while. I think they did a few movies together, but I haven't seen most of them at this point.
One thing that I would like to mention is that around the same time is when the remake of the movie Dread was out. and
Was it-
I believe.
Oh yeah, it is.
And in there, in the remake of Dread, they also had an apartment building that had a drug related incident, and I do believe that it kind of went a similar way, at least as far as the zombie drug that apparently the Dread movie was having in its thing. And when I was looking up this movie, apparently it was paired together in a documentary thing. So.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with that. The similarities between this and Dread are surprising. But yeah, it is very much the same in a lot of ways. I mean, it does have that multi-tiered building. You have that guy at the head of it. You've got those tenants that are there. It is that is something I didn't think about it. I think I've blocked that movie out of my mind.
I love both. I love both movies personally.
Yeah, Dread came out 2012, so yeah, it was right on the tail of this. Huh.
Maybe they saw it and were like, "Oh, we can do that."
Maybe. I don't know. And I know Evans, I don't know that an American remake ever got made. I know he was talking about one. He thought there would be one.
Well, there was talk about a third film.
There was talk of that too.
Yeah.
But I don't think that they ever slated that to ever happen.
From the comments I read from him, he kind of had burnout after the second one. He wanted to take some time and do something else. And then looking back on it, he's like, we kind of completed this story, so we'll just leave it. Yeah. Which doesn't mean he'll never come back to it. I mean, it might be one of those ones. We're seeing a lot of sequels nowadays where they come back like 10 years, 15 years later. What's that?
I said 30 years.
Sometimes, yeah. So you could even have something where like Iko's kid grows up to become like this badass martial artist or something, and they just do a movie like that. I don't know. I mean, there are possibilities, but I don't know. But again, he was talking seriously about a remake, and I can't recall that I ever heard of one getting made. Maybe it got retitled, or maybe they took that funding and made Dread as a nod to the Raid instead of a remake. I mean, it was already a remake, wasn't it, of like an older movie, but like
of Stallone's
right. So, so I guess we basically hit most of the characters. Does anyone have any other character-related stuff they want to throw out, like people that stuff we didn't mention about particular characters, or?
I don't think that there are any real particular characters that we can ever really bring up that we already haven't. But I do like and want to talk about number one, when his brother gets hung in a room, and we get Mad Dog. And
that's kind of the end of it. That's the big ender. So let's. Is there anything leading up to that? Anyone?
It was kind of interesting how the whoever was left when they went into that office area, and they had that over the table fight and opened up drawers and file drawers and
the drug lab.
Yeah, the drug lab.
Yeah, that was kind of fun. That was the one part you got to see. That's the one part you got to see the old dude, Wayu. That's the one part you really get to see him fight.
Yeah,
and it's pretty. There's not a lot of art to it. He's pretty much just doing straight up brawling. But, he obviously he's an older dude too, so he could only do but so much. And I want to say, and again, you got, of course, Rama doing the Silat. I want to say the other guy was a Taekwondo user, if I'm remembering correctly. So you do get a mixture of styles in that scene, which is kind of fun. You get a lot of but yeah, a lot of drawers, cabinets being knocked over, a lot of destruction. And in general, there's a lot of destruction on this building. But a couple scenes I want to mention. One is the whole thing with the Machete Gang. I mean, that was a pretty interesting set of sequences. You got Dave. You mentioned the part where he's going down the hallway tapping the machete.
Correct.
That
That's
was
when they were kind of separated from each other,
right.
and it just kind of reminded me of like various horror films where
Yes.
you're just scraping along,
Yes.
and it's meant to make you think, that they're getting closer and closer, and then of course someone makes some other noise, and they're saved from that moment. But
I think they hear gunfire, don't they?
Yeah.
I think, yeah.
And ultimately, that guy gets killed by Uwe in the hallway, and there were a few hallway moments that I think that were pretty action filled.
Well, this one, when the gang comes after him, you've got the first one that encounters Rama ends up getting thrown over the side, and that was kind of a brutal moment when he lands and breaks his back on the wall.
Oh, yeah.
And that apparently was one of the biggest accidents they had on set. The first time they shot that, apparently the trajectory of the wires was wrong, and the dude ended up smacking his head against the wall and dropping 15 feet, and not on the mats where they were supposed to land. The trajectory, Evans said in the interview, there were mats everywhere except where he landed. It's the way that it happened. But he brushed it off after being checked out with the medics, and they were like, no, dude, you're done for today. And they came back like 4 days later and shot that scene. But the way they described it, it was very intriguing how they put that together. But yeah, a movie like that, you'll have some accidents, and that could have been a big one. But so then you get the actual fight that starts in the hallway and spills into the room when you get the door busted open, and that nasty bit where he jumps back and dude right down on the splitter door. And apparently Evans said that he thought that was sort of a Bruce Lee moment, because he thought Lee sometimes would go overboard and then show regret at what he had done. And we'll talk about one of those scenes in Enter the Dragon with O'Hara. Actually, I think that was the one that Evans cited in the interview. He said that scene with Bruce Lee and O'Hara. And there's this brief shot where Rama looks at him and goes, and then, of course, the fight goes on. And I think there were 3 dudes left at that point. And and they're all, that was a pretty intriguing sequence there. The whole room that almost looked like like it could be more of a club than some room. What do y'all find in that fight sequence, y'all?
It was entertaining. It had its moments where the fighting sequences did go a little bit too long, but with each film, each of them had their own quirks. So to me, you want the audience to be entertained enough to make sure that that the martial artist is like flipping the guy's arm back, and you hear that crack of the bones and shit like that, you know, and it's like things like that I'm looking for. Like how far back can they be backbraked, or you know, things of that nature. You
Good
know,
times.
To me, the more brutal it is,
Mhm.
at least as far as the martial arts parts.
Mhm.
I mean, sometimes you can use slow motion to do that. And
Mhm.
I'm not sure if they entirely use slow motion. They use fast motion.
They didn't use much slow motion. Again, that part where the kid getting shot, they definitely did slow motion. And there were a couple of other moments, but not a lot.
Well, yeah, that particular moment kind of reminded me of the moment in Wanted. I don't know if any of you.
I need to see it. I have it. I need to see
I
it.
think it was with Samuel L. Jackson, but he was teaching a girl to shoot a bullet a certain way.
Wasn't the instructor role in that one Morgan Freeman? I don't know. Sam Jackson might have been in it. I want to say the one I'm thinking of is Morgan Freeman, Ewan McGregor, and Angelina Jolie. I think not Ewan McGregor. What's his face?
Jude Law.
Jude Law? Yeah, it might have been. Yeah. Anyway, I just still need to see that one of these days. So that one kind of culminates with Big Dude, the architect dude, and Rama bull rushes them out a window, and they fall down like 2 stories, something like that, onto a fire escape. And of course, Rama lands on top, so he, the other guy takes the brunt of the fall. And then you see Rama stagger into a room, a couple of these junkies looking at him like, what's going on? And he kind of stumbles out in the hallway, and he walks a little ways, and then gets yanked into a room. And that's when he meets up with Andy. Andy had, they mentioned in the interview that like they thought that this was a moment of showing his weakness, showing that he can be defeated. And if anyone but Andy had pulled him into that room, he would have been dead at that moment. And it was just, and that was supposedly more of a nod to Jackie Chan, because he tends to play characters who get put through the ringer. Although eventually, of course, they come out on top. Yeah. So they have their little tete-a-tete there. And then he leaves and meets Mad Dog at the elevator. And Mad Dog is carrying Jaka's body, dragging him along. And they have this weird, almost kids in the schoolyard moment where they're kind of like, that's not the right guy. Well, what you got? and then they go up to meet Tama. And Tama does the same thing. He looks at him. He's like, let me see your hands. He looks at his hands. Nope, nothing there. Turn him over. And he looks at him as serious as can be. Nope, you wasted my time. And then, then you get this thing, this out of nowhere, Mad Dog knocks him down. Hand falls on the table, and you see Tama put the knife that he was calmly eating an apple with right through Andy's hand. It was kind of a fun little scene there, not kind of a interesting reckoning, if you will, for and then we get after we kind of skipped over the whole thing with the machete gang in that guy's room.
Oh, are you talking about behind the secret wall?
Where they're hiding behind the secret wall, yeah. That was a good horror movie moment there.
Yeah. Well, and of course, after dude leaves, we see that the wound is kind of superficial a little bit after that.
Yeah.
Right. But you do have, the guy spots the secret wall and starts just running it through randomly with the machete. And getting closer and closer. And then out of nowhere, machete comes through. And it's like he turns his head just, Rama turns his head just quick enough and you see that little like the knife like right down his right cheek, almost got his ear.
Yeah.
And I was like,
And they gave him a cool scar for the rest of the movie.
it did give well for both of them. Yes, they gave him a nice little scar there. And nice little, for me, a little bit of a callback to Princess Bride because he gets the complimentary scar in the second. But had there been a third film, he probably would have had the little scar on both sides as he went through his activities. So you have that. So you get Rama meets back up with the old dude and the other dude. We'll call him that, the old dude and the other dude. And they go start toward the top, but then Rama sees the torture room and he sees his brother through the tiny little window, and he goes in, and Mad Dog is just going to town on Andy, just having And when he sees the other guy come in, he goes back, he lowers the chain, he lets them, lets Rama let his brother loose. He lets him tie up his hand with the cloth, and
and he's like,
you have that nice,
interesting.
Then you have this nice 2-on-1 fight that is a long fight. I think the whole fight's like 8 minutes or something, 7 minutes.
Yeah.
It's a good chunk.
Out of the fights, that's the one I remember the most.
Well, it's meant to be.
And but to me, I feel like out of all the fights, that's the one that deserved to be that long. I mean, most fights with them, even like the most like basic mook, were usually about 30 seconds to a minute long on the first floor. So it's kind of good that you were getting. I mean, of course, you're going to have to up the time, but yeah, to me, that was a fairly epic fight. It mostly held my attention.
For the most part, he is the main boss for all intents and purposes.
Yeah.
I mean,
well, it certainly isn't the big guy at the top because he can't fight.
Well, he could, but he didn't. He not as he likes to let other people do it.
To me, the two fights of note are the one between Jaka and Mad Dog, and the one between Rama and Mad Dog. And of course, you can't forget the shootout when right after the fucking shit. When the big boss says, "Okay, everyone in this place, you're going to have citizenship in this apartment building, so just have at it."
The lights out. And actually, that was a use of slow-mo. That was a rare use of slow-mo in the film, where someone let a bullet go, and the spark from that bullet lit them up so that the people up above could see and were able to start, they turned it into a fish in a barrel almost. That was a kind of a rough little bit there. But so you have that lengthy fight that ends with there was Mad Dog wasn't walking away from you have this thing where at one point in the fight, Rama gets flipped and kicks an overhead fluorescent light, and the bulbs come down. And Andy ends up driving one of those into Mad Dog. But he still wants to keep going. It's not until Rama grabs that and goes.
I know me and my fiance, we were like, "That dude just won't go down, will he?"
And then you got the part where they see each other on the stairs, and while you offs Tama, basically, once he realizes he's been played, he kills the guy and then puts the gun to his head, and he's out of bullets.
Yeah.
And that was very carefully planned. That they specifically set it up so he would waste all the bullets, and when he goes to kill him, he's not getting off that easy, as it were. And I like that moment. actually, because that guy didn't deserve to get off easy. But and then then they go. Andy and his brother have their final parting, which is pretty clear that it's going to be probably a final parting. And they go and roll credits pretty much. And in the American version, you get a pretty fun little song that plays over the end credits. But in the original, it was just music. But so that's kind of the whole plot and character and all that in a nutshell. We've touched on other things as we go, but let's go ahead, I guess, and talk about the special effects and the makeup, costume, set design, all that kind of fun stuff. What do you all think of the overall visual package of this?
Indeed, it was pretty good. I thought that put it together well.
Right.
But really, the main character of this is the building, and I think that they did an excellent job with that design.
Well, and even though it wasn't exactly hardcore Henry, it definitely had that video game likeness of a single action shooter game where you're kind of Black Ops in it at least to the point of the apartment building, and then of course you got your other areas just like Resident Evil where you got to go off and like save a few people, and but the way and the look of the levels of the apartment building made it feel like a Resident Evil game in a sense, because you're each room and each level is its own like entity, and it seems like and because it's a SWAT team, you're seeing them go through with their certain stances and whatnot, and of course you got your goons that are just expendable, and you got your second level goons and your third level goons and all that jazz thrown into the mix, and there's just some cool explosions and different things thrown at each other. So I thought that the special effects were actually pretty solid. As far as Brandon, you said that some of the fight scenes went too long. I would have to agree in some aspects. I mean, some fight scenes didn't need to be extended to that long. Sometimes you just wanted to see the guys just die.
I mean, seeing them back to back, seeing both the first and the second movie really, in my opinion, made all the difference. If you look at it, like this movie, I haven't said a ton because I've watched this movie twice and I had a hard time keeping my concentration through most of it, both times, because after a while I'd be like, okay, this is pretty cool. Okay, it's still going. All right. And I would just zone out. And the second movie didn't have any of that. The fights would go on for a little while, but they would not go on for nearly as long. They tightened that bad boy up. It had the same brutality, but it felt
they upped it with the brutality.
Yeah, they had a high brutality rate, but they definitely shortened the like per fight quota.
Right.
You got to see more of this guy. He's doing the Superman type fighting thing, taking him down. So yeah, it was just the pacing of it felt slower to me.
Rate 2 was a different level of a movie too. So
it was a different creature. There was a lot. Like this one actually was the second thought of. Like the second one was what Evans wanted to do originally, and all the producers were offering him a budget that was like less than half of what he needed. So he went ahead and said, okay, well, how can I use the budget they're offering effectively? So he did a much more scaled down movie, and then he was able to make some slight tweaks to his concept and build the second one off of that, which is kind of a creative way to get about it and to make it happen. It is kind of funny that the second one is 2.5 hours and the first one is just over an hour and a half long. That's like one of the biggest differences in two movies that you get. I did. I did also want to make a comment on the fight lengths. You guys, well, I know Brandon knows. You guys may not be as aware of this. I am very much someone who tunes out fights that are excessively long. Like if I am watching or an anime or reading a manga that's like a heavy shonen series, you know, One Piece and Naruto, whatever, I get bored quickly if it's all fights, you know. And this is kind of the same deal. I was getting a little bored by some of those fights, but a couple things worked in favor of the movie.
Especially
One, the
with-
whole thing.
Especially with the weapons.
Well, especially what? I didn't
Sorry,
hear what you said.
Especially with
cut
the
off
weapon,
somehow. Weapons,
Yeah.
yeah.
especially
Well, basically, yeah. The first, there's a couple things that worked in its favor. One is that the whole film is pretty friggin' kinetic. It moves. Even though the fight scenes drag on a little long, it never feels to me like nothing is happening. Like it's a very high action, high energy film. And
Yes.
that carried me through some of the slower parts. Also, it's short. Like if this movie had been 2.5 hours long, I would have said, why didn't they cut down those fight scenes? You know what I mean? Like if the movie is barely an hour and a half, I'm willing to roll with what they give me more often than not. If it had been 2.5 hours, they would have had to
I
earn.
will say this. I will say this. The way they made this apartment building look, it was supposed to be about 30 levels, but in actuality, it was more of a level of like 14 levels, 15 if you included the ground floor.
Not even that. Like, well, the advertising
Yeah.
said 30, I think. The movie looks like it's about 14 or so. But even that, most of the film, most of the building itself is faked.
Mhm.
Like the actual facade they used, I think they said was a 4-story office building that looked perfectly clean and ordinary. And they
It's
managed-
only a model.
It's only a model. And then a lot of the indoor stuff was fake too. They used a lot of green screen, like that whole atrium where there's that big, empty space that goes up and down. All that they did that to a green screen. That set was like 2 stories tall, and they had trouble even finding where they could do that. But so overall, I thought the effects were solid. Now that I know more about what effects went into the movie, like all the guns were fake. Most of the stuff with bullets was CG. Like they weren't even using blanks. It was CG. So that was pretty solid. They did use a lot of practical effects for makeup and blood and that sort of stuff, but that was combined with CG, for continuity and that kind of stuff. So it was a very CG heavy, but with some pretty good practical effects as well. And I think overall they incorporated it well. The camera work was meant to be documentary style, and I think they did a good job with that. Again, the whole thing with the hull, I was really intrigued with how they did that because they had 2 separate camera people to do one fluid take all going down the hull, which is kind of neat how they did that, so that was mostly for the visuals, all I had on that. The music, again, do you know, each of you, which track you listened to?
I'm pretty sure I listened to the American version first because
Same here.
because my fiance can't really take too many subtitled films.
Because Brandon, the initial rip you put up, I think, was the original Indonesian version with that music. I'm
Yeah.
pretty sure.
Oddly enough, if you downloaded it, and I
Yeah.
tried this on a different computer to see if it would work
Right.
before somebody like spread it all over the internet and crashed my account. Um,
Somebody.
so when I downloaded it to the other computer, I was able to select the language in the subtitle, so I could
Yeah.
actually see it in the English or the other, which was brought in. So that was kind of a cool thing. I didn't try the one that I sent to anybody who I don't know if anybody actually watched it from something I sent.
Yeah, so for me, again, I watched it, I think both times, with the original score.
You
And
got
then
it as the whole thing crashed, as my account crashed.
Yeah. And then the new version, I saw the commentary had the American version on it.
Yeah.
So the original score was Arya Prayogi and Fajar Yukismal, which again they were involved in the actual sound on the film, and then Mike Shinoda and Joseph Trapense did the English version. What do y'all think of the whichever version you heard, as far as how that fit the film and what have you?
As far as the dubbing goes, I thought it was pretty much fairly spot on for their characters, except for maybe the older cop figure. I think his voice was a little off, but other than that, I mean, the dub was pretty good. I mean, it's not as bad as the dub you get in Enter the Dragon, at least. But we'll get to that.
Well, you know, the whole thing, I watched it partially in both because it started off in the original language, but then when I was falling asleep and missing large chunks of the plot, I went ahead and I switched it over to the English dub, and I felt both felt solid.
The thing is, there's only a handful of scenes you really truly miss much if you don't in terms of plot. There's a few, but
I think the only
the question was specifically about the music. I was curious what everyone thought of the music for the film.
I think the other the guy who was in the apartment building with his wife or whatnot, his dubbing was a little off too. But then again, I almost thought that guy actually played in a movie that I saw called Everly, with Selma Hayek, and that's kind of a Christmas movie. I should have actually put that in. That's an action-filled one, and it's a female-led action one. So, anyways, the Chinese, there was this Chinese guy sitting on the couch that was like shot up, and he was like her person to tell her, okay, this is what's going to happen next, kind of a guy. And he kind of looked like this guy that was bringing pills for his wife. So I don't know whether he was the guy or not.
Oh, the guy we didn't really talk about him as a character, did we? And who was? I don't remember his name, honestly. I don't remember his name, so I'm not sure how to look him up. Was it?
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Gareth, Gofar.
Gofar, yeah. Well, he is played by Ian Darmawan, and apparently he is well known as a comedic actor, which is kind of interesting. But what was the name of the movie you mentioned?
Oh, Everly, but
No,
I don't.
It's definitely not that.
He just looks similar to the guy
Right.
laying on the couch, blown to bits, and all you could see was that he was dying, and he was helpful to her.
Right.
So.
Okay.
Right.
So I'll take it then
to wrap up soon.
I'll take it then that no one had any comments on the music. Fine.
Yeah, it really didn't. It really didn't stand out to me. In
I
this
thought
movie.
it was good. I liked it. I don't know. Yeah, whatever. Anyway, And I was intrigued that they did do two separate ones, but that's kind of weird, but it's the way it goes sometimes. Any last random stuff anyone wants to bring up? Anything that about the film or whatever?
Well, since
The name is. Oh, go ahead, Forrest.
well, since this is my first time watching it in English, because I was so I was so used to watching. I was used to watching it in Indonesian, so it was very the dubbing is just very. I just found it very bizarre, very bizarre. It kind of took me out of the movie compared to the Indonesian dub.
And
I still enjoyed it though.
what are some of the aspects of this film that you took from this film?
Aspects?
Like if you were to say this, describe it to a friend, what would you describe from this movie to them?
Okay. Actually, I remember going by my original Facebook review of it back when it came out. I'd probably say Die Hard plus Hard Boiled multiplied by Double Dragon.
I never did see Hard Boiled was John Woo, right? And Yun Fa Chao is the star of that, or am I remembering that wrong? I need to see that. I need to see that as well one of these days.
I have yet to watch that or Double Dragon.
Yeah.
Well, actually, I was thinking the video game, not the movie.
Right. Well, I know the video game.
Yeah, I know the video game, but not the movie.
So I guess then we want to talk favorites then. Favorite.
Before I let Forrest go, but I did want to say one thing when you were doing that, which was just the Raid Redemption is the name of the film, but it can be confusing to people not familiar with it.
Yeah.
And it makes you think, well, the Raid Redemption, does that mean that it's the raid, and then there's the redemption? I think it's all this time everything's being remade, so it's kind of confusing. You're thinking,
those in Indonesia know it as the raid. We know it as the Raid Redemption.
That's like I said. The original title, the second one had a subtitle. The first one did not.
So I just out of somebody, if you're looking for it and you see the Raid Redemption, don't worry. That's exactly what this is. That's the first film.
And this is also not the Great Raid, just so you know.
No.
So.
All right. Now I'm good.
All right. So, and do we want to, do we want to just do sort of favorite / mini outro and save the proper outros for the second? Is that the way we're doing it this time?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, who wants to do their favorites first?
I'll sit the machete. For me, the Machete Gang.
Okay. Like just everything about it.
Everything about it. It was just so. It was just a very like the Machete Gang themselves, totally crazy. And just like when Rama is hiding behind the walls and they're poking through the walls, it just had me like on the edge of my seat. Like he's going to make it out or not.
Yeah, it is worth stating, like, this film is actually a hybrid. Like, a lot of people would call it an action film, or they would call it a martial arts film, or an action martial arts film, like a cop procedural / martial arts film. It's also worth stating that I kind of joked that it was like 38 minutes in, we finally get martial arts. But they make a point, Evans made a good point several times in interviews I saw, that he didn't want people to just throw their guns away when, they're a SWAT team. They use the weapons that they are trained to use. When they run out of bullets, they'll use knives and sticks. When they run out of those, hand to hand. And so it was a natural progression as the movie went on. And there may have been a couple of times where it was contrived to bring about, like Mad Dog putting down the gun, but they did it in a way that worked to build his character. But you don't, it's not just like a bunch of cops going into a building and all of a sudden they're using martial arts. So they did it in a way that made sense. But yes, it did lead to some kind of boring gunfire scenes early on, and but anyway, but the third part that Evans specifically mentioned was survival horror. And the Resident Evil description is probably apt because, in a sense, this is a survival horror film as much as it is an action film. So it's kind of fun. And definitely the scenes with the machete guy brought out the horror aspect a lot. Brandon, how about you? What are you thoughts?
I liked the first part of that scene where they kind of have that final big battle where he finds his brother there. He gets him free, and we start off that 2-on-1. I'm not exactly sure I would say the whole battle because it does go on for a while, but I consider it one of the most memorable scenes of all. And also, just as a shout out for this, because this was going to be a main film. So this is a shout out to the people who made this a main film, which would be Movie Collectors. I believe you were the ones that really brought this out, and Moe's Tavern. Both of y'all did that. But also we had votes from Talk Movies With Us and An Amazing Collections. And so just as a shout out to you all.
I imagine some of them were from Amazing because I remembered I knew of this from the memes well before I'd heard about it anywhere else, and it was a lot of the same circles that I would look at like anime memes and whatever. Anyway, Dave, what are your favorites on this one?
I would have to say the propane tank refrigerator scene is one of my favorites. That was just a spontaneous combustion kind of moment, and I kind of like the what preceded it, and I also like the bullet scene, the slow motion bullet. Even though I know that you don't kill a kid, but if you look at it from a perspective of these other countries do use kids, that not that it makes it okay. It just makes it more violent and more personal to you, and it's a moment that you can be like, okay, yes, that hasn't been done before yet. Kind of a moment, and it was gruesome, and but I also kind of like the Mad Dog against the brothers fight. And the fight that Mad Dog had with Jaka as well. So I can't exactly pick just one because some of the martial arts moves were new to me. So it was entertaining for the most part. I didn't fall asleep and I wasn't zoning out, but there were a couple of moments where I was kind of like, Other than that, Dave, and join us on our next exciting discussion on the Inside Movie Galore channel, where we are going to go on about a legend.
Right.
Yes.
And then, so for me, the best part. Oh, I do want to mention.
Yeah, I forgot to get his best part. Yeah.
Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, don't shut it off yet, Dave. But we forgot to mention the part that really showed Yu's true colors, and that's when he goes into the office and sees Tama and turns and shoots the other cop. That was a kind of a whoa moment there. If I had to pick a favorite, because I actually enjoyed several parts, and it was mostly little moments, but I really enjoyed the introduction of the baddies of Tama and Andy and Mad Dog. That whole scene with the guys lined up, and I just loved that introduction, especially how they introduced them eating ramen. It was just like, and then Mad Dog's little speech about why he doesn't use guns. I actually enjoyed that quite a bit. And yes, the fights with Jaka and with the brothers were pretty impressive fights. The last one did go a little longer, The other one was almost over too quickly in a sense, but
Mhm.
Taka was outmatched. He really was in that instance. And some of the scenes with the machete guy, I will admit as well, the tapping on the wall and the scene where they're hiding in the wall, some good scenes there. So that's, I guess that about does her. And so, like Dave said, we got a classic coming up, so that'll be fun to watch. And that's all I got.
Alrighty. So like, share, and subscribe, ladies and
Yep.
gentlemen. Hopefully you didn't mind our ramblings on this particular film, and just join us over on our channel, and hopefully we have some insights into a film that is kind of a monumental film of its era. So well, let's have fun. Say goodnight, everyone.
All right,
Good
everyone.
night, everyone.